Hello, Americans. This video is in response to a YouTuber who made a video to show Americans and to show the human species body of individual bodies the bigger picture regarding how people can't afford food prices and how a farmer had to give away produce, and there were huge line people waiting for hours to get produce for free because it's so expensive. See, but it's not just that we have to step back and look at, discern. A breaching method designed the suburbs, and then America's founders were born. Slavery rolls were only permitted, northern colonies and southern colonies. Our founders left declassified why and how we're not supposed to entertain American history, how it unfolded, then pretending you could vote on something like slavery. There was a breaching method entrenched that our founders left us to understand. It was the difference of the guilt of the internationally monitored conversations, which was companies from the same countries fighting with each other, from the other countries fighting with each other. But everyone was part of that breaching method that had only been. England doesn't even remember the history of English, because this breaching method reassigned names to A through Z in defenses of themselves, simultaneously having been defending more and more use/s of difference/s through an as systems tactical ulterior from nature's, specifically to have nature demonstrate that. And for the breaching method to use those demonstrations, which also contain demonstrations of the breaching method. For example, nature shows us that a breaching method is one of the things that those affronts on Native American rights, those affronts on women's rights, those affronts on Black pupils, whites of eyes, communications, human rights, multi-front, all those crazy, sick laws were equally about value as a human fact, human nature breaching method employed multi-front roles with its overall hyper-archetypal agenda that had been entrenched and never went away, North and South. You guys can't speak about the Civil War properly. You were child abused by a hyper-foreign at countries A through Z. The campuses and defenses of the names of the people from history, including presidents and chiefs, in their defenses of it, they have collusions with the people attacking it and not even fathoming. They have delusions at the same time. You guys can be healed, but you have to follow mandated law, and it will reveal this as actually being and having been recorded. This breaching method already showed originally and still the three branches of government in countries A through Z. They have to use everything that comes and came before them to hide their actually recorded value relative to this. As collusion/s, with location/s everywhere the human species body is, and then further hyper additionally through where and how locked in. The names of the people, the sciences, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, roles with the other side of those internationally monitored conversations to measure and maintain everyone an extent of syntactical collusion/s against themselves and everyone else, or that body sensed. But through everyone else too, only capable of not knowing. They are sensing for hyper-foreign. So I'm one of the people that was next to the World Trade Center attack. That news attached to totally faked and to change communications of others. Names on both sides of a case in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers that morning. And before that, and the night before it, and long term before it, and short term before it. There are names interstates and internationally who colluded, and their motivations are relative to their roles of predicate acts and methods of predicate acts at and next to campuses. Weathersfield campuses and one's intercities recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Weathersfield police and people associated with the name Scalora have some sexual and medical offenders of kids. Collusions with intelligence agencies, foreign and domestic, with identity theft, fraud, slanders too. Acting as collusion/s with people that have been putting predicate acts on at campuses. And they have roles with untimely deaths and body dumping spots. It names all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have all along Route 175. They've been acting in time so others can fill in fake things. Weird how they use their names that are collusion/S, rolls with U/S of that, even worse, that everyone's missing, but to an extent, relative to where and how the breaching method shows names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The interbranch and intelligence, as they actually are recorded, shared with a whole bunch of countries in the news, including the ones fighting with each other. In other words, they have natures of industries that are uncharged here and there. They have roles with relative to means to discern it comes through. Appreciation of those things that our founders had to have declassified for their communications, like why and how the plural founders, the only one of them we know the name of, is James Madison. So you guys got away with having your leaders pretend things like that are debatable because they came through campuses that were criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw, to exploit that there or at location, because that was hyper additional, and it is maintained increasingly hyper additional collusion/S from off with a body/S from off campuses, maintaining collusion/S. They have attacks to, they have roles with their differences. With the intelligence community has their sexual groups, including their sexual narratives and names next to the campuses, like where they have private locations, involved with cover-ups with FBI Director Robert Luskin and people with the Saudi Arabia, involved with the World Trade Center attack, also per worse. It's recorded their roles with Mendez police are recorded involved with people with the state judicial branch offices, and next to it, planting evidences with a DeMoro family and Enzo Fienza with confessions and confirmations on Facebook about his roles with mayors in the state judicial branch offices and others. I don't know all the names of them, intercities. They've been planting evidences next to the networks too, with intelligence, foreign and domestic, military, fire departments, lawyers of the FBI and the Weathersfield police chiefs retired. Police chiefs retired, and there's intimate ties in their families, collusion/S with a whole bunch of people tied to the same house/S, further involved with the principal upskirt nature, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids that a Leahy family had collusions with them with. They faked conversations with me through the mail to other people that won't communicate with me. 3 times, people at Harvard Hospital have a whole bunch of people collusions with an 80 Carroll Drive, who has extended family members named DeMoro and Scalora tied to a Cololo family, and a whole bunch of people with the businesses and buildings next to the state capitol in Connecticut are collusion/S with names next to campuses and all along roads and routes. Mark Violet, all along Route 175, in conjunctions to it. He planted evidences, acted others with foreign and domestic intelligence to influence him, with names with identity theft, fraud. I never tried to contact him. They try to make fake exceptions as their collusion/S with interstates, with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, as recorded hyper-evidential evidences. And the interbranch with the same sequence shift self-valued at the same time with the news, too, to prevent any voice proper for the Constitution unabridged. And for why and how we have rights that are too numerous to list. And they're pretending not to be able to discern that originally and still. In other words, fake branches kill. Vaccines. These are also people further additionally with that hyper additional on off the corrections offices and the judicial branch offices in conjunctions to it and to that as collusion/S with the World Trade Center attack. A bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut have collusion/S with names next to where the Weathersfield Police Department is now. They attached me to fake conversations, transcripts at the police station with some Mendez police brothers. I didn't have one conversation with one officer there, and they forced my Saudi friend to collusion/S with them, and with the ones named Scalora and DeMoro, interstates involved in internationally with the World Trade Center attack. They planted evidences with people with the side entrances to Mill Woods Park, with foreign and domestic military. This might be because there are generals involved. There's a whole bunch of people tied to I don't even know their name. I never had a conversation with her. A Joe DeMoro and a Heather Hansen and a Mike Kerr and others said that there's a Donahue, I believe is the name, family involved with them with child abusers intercities and interbranch, and that was confirmed by them. But they won't get on paper. They're forging names, switching names, putting fake transcripts with foreign and domestic at campuses. These are also people involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University making confessions to me and who made requests to help from me before and after the World Trade Center attack with the people involved at the World Trade Center and next to it, including in the court next to it, and the night before, spots next to it, those names, and people with the name Scalora are increasingly collusion /S interstates and internationally, and with people who have roles with home break-ins on my street, involved with organized crimes with the FBI directors, plural, involved with the FBI various natures of federal criminals, and some of them as co-defendants of former director of the FBI and their lawyer, Robert Chevary, and other spots associated with him, and names around that area are increasing, and other natures of conjunctions to him and to other Wethersfield police officers, lawyers, are involved with planting evidences, readings of statutes relative criminally for nipples, tactically delusions raw. We have black pupils, whites of eyes to discern the names of the people, the sciences, are a certain type of victim / hyper victim. They need to be that have been victim predators / hyper predators, tools who are breaching methods, also breaching screens. So we're going to examine they are preventing us from using calm speech or aggressive speech. And then they fake transcripts tied to that. And they have relative delusions, which is also why they have to fake transcripts. They have roles replacing and self-valued, being used and having been used remotely, self-valued, replacing what our founders communicated to be communicated for their principles and for their communications, and about how the breaching method didn't allow free speech and forced everyone to pretend they had free speech to an extent /S, otherwise that body was sensed and is sensed. And they have delusions too when they speak about how America unfolded, and they pretend that you could vote on slavery and be able to speak about the Constitution unabridged. We're supposed to attend to those abridgments. You know, you have a bunch of noisemakers, only ones allowed to be heard. And the FBI has collusions with people with named Joshua Julian and Ray Cololo with predicate acts on my street, also on the intermedia. These are also Facebook is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids with New Britain Superior Court at Wethersfield campuses with a proven upskirt nature picture guy and their own kids, and including teachers at West Hartford campuses and names next to their campuses, have roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids with foreign and domestic military. Eric Burgess is one of my sources before the World Trade Center attack. I recorded it was involved with them, planting evidences, cover-ups from their roles with all sides of criminal civil cases, interbranch, switching names, sequence, collusions with the crime scenes, whole bunch of different countries, and their collusions with the leaders of the kids and their kids, and the abuses of them or the other kids, and the difference of that, and everyone's self-fired roles, otherwise that body is sensed. How they pull it off is relative to how. There's relativity with where and how. We're not supposed to refer to the plural founders as anyone but James Madison. They had to counter-extort everyone else. Why I had to counter-extort them is, again, relative to why and how we're supposed to understand why and how nobody had free speech. Everyone had to pretend other. And it wasn't just, it was the difference of guilt, too, used by the breaching method between the internationally monitored conversations, the international companies associated with that wood country, the war, then all that to hide behind and through by the hyper-foreign that came from since before. Religious messengers were born. It made it measure a breaching method. It is more probable and practical to blame a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise method /S that also demonstrably Captain Keeps with the World Trade Center attack was effectively used to keep other things, others ourselves, blamed for its roles with what I caught them doing on off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University with my neighbors and a whole bunch of people tied to them involved with an untimely death at Trinity College and a whole bunch of people tied to and as Joshua Stryker involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me with the FBI and various natures of federal criminals and their family members with a whole bunch of overt criminal enterprises, private ones in other countries at and between campuses, planting predicate acts and acting tied to it as collusion/S, also interstates with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch with the same self-eyed sequence shifts and relative delusions. Fix the fake conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack, fake ties to me, including fake ties to doctors that weren't at all when I was a kid and as an adult that WFSB pretended. And they've been doing this to other kids, family members. Wethersfield intercities campuses. There's also people with the intelligence involved with the Luigi Guerrero and his sister and other ties to him. I never had conversations with them. These are people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed them, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with hierarchy associated with them, with their roles with foreign and domestic intelligence. And these are people speaking through other. Again, I never spoke for them. These are also the news and the campuses recording with nonverbal confirmations. The FBI director, Robert Luskin, also has nonverbal communications about his collusion/S with the names that also make him. So went out of their way to seek me out to make confessions. In other words, regarding that, like a John Maiano, he has roles with WFSB and the intelligence at their place and next to their place with a whole bunch of names, like ones with the name Violet. And as their roles with houses and businesses next to Harvard Hospital, involved with Harvard Hospital names, involved with the Maiano family and others along Elm Streets in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill who have collusion/S with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. People I never tried to contact in my life who sought me out years apart and to plant evidence on my street in their roles with conversations with teachers I had behind my back who and their collusions recorded with influences from off campuses that maintain hyper additional collusion/S there that the campuses don't want, but they're being forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles. They also recorded that too, and they're hiding that. That's why it's important to get them on paper, one name and sequence. The interbranch has putting fake writing of letters and faked and changed the digital communications that was actually typed, including to Judge Napolitano, because I know he's not a collusion/S, even if he's a little bit, not to that extent. In other words, they have to hide libraries, they do whatever. Well, that's what the statute does. In other words, they're reading the statutes. We don't even have to be lawyers. We have black pupils, whites of eyes to discern they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. On a mass scale, they pretend that people don't, in other words, they have mental health. There are a whole bunch of people named Leahy involved with multiple courts at the same time with identity theft, fraud, slanders in them, and they have relative delusions and roles replacing what our founders communicated. Black pupils, period. Who disbelieves? Get them on paper, one name and sequence. We're not supposed to bring up food, why we hunger and thirst through systems abridged. Look at the people in New York City. Get a job. They're in the background of rap videos for a reason. Angry rap videos. You guys aren't allowing calm speech or in other words. All natures are different. We're really led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible, that which doesn't leave out the smallest finite detail. In other words, we all agree on things too. The research campuses and the polling campuses, Quinnipiac University has had collusions used remotely criminally foreign influence. Tactically delusions wrought. Same thing with the best campuses. UConn has all kinds of corruption with foreign and domestic military. People involved with this name, Violet, intercities and intra-cities, involved with names at my campuses with identity. I never had a class with them. And they're also the roles increasingly planting evidences with names next to my street in Wethersfield. Increasingly with Wethersfield police in the courts, the Britain Superior Court, forging names, sequence ships, making confessions, and preventing writing so they could stick more fake writing in databases and then pretend that's debatable. Get them the heck on paper into branch. Judge Napolitano, do what's right for Fox Connecticut News. The difference of guilt of the intelligence at their location rolls with wire crime acts and methods, not just with the phones and with the broadcast. The difference of that was is used remotely too. A bunch of people with the spots next to them through time have roles putting fake ties, fake natures of the ties to be also fake for them. And roles with databases used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions raw. And as the ones involved with time collusion /S, who had collusions before that with the World Trade Center attack, intercities and interstates and internations. So a Scalora family is increasingly with WFSB, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, non-verbally, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, too. Collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates and internationally, including Facebook. There are proofs that internationally, they can't speak about syntax regarding what's typed or the hate speech. They're not supposed to bring up the differences without leaving out and changing what our founders communicated about the breaching methods employment of difference /S and roles countering it also as collusions with this breaching method or that body was sensed, including if it was a majority of people and it was adapted to, including if it was everybody. Any grouping of nations while you're still locations, areas, and states. With principal treatments reliant upon other things, others ourselves, blamed for where the breaching method is by nature itself being demonstrated to us and replaced right from the communications of James Madison and of our founders, plural. Step back, who disbelieves? Get them onto paper, one name in sequence, please.